Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Impact Space podcast. It's been a minute, but so happy to be back here with my bro, Mumbi. How you doing?
I'm good, man, and it's good to see you, and it's good to be back.
Yeah, it's been a while. This is going to be aimed to be about 30 minutes, and for players that can use this information like today at their club, wherever they predominantly play their football, because we're getting into communication, all about communication. Essentially, we want to go over this idea and this phenomenon that happens on every pitch, where a breakdown happens, and instantly, especially on the parent sideline and also on coaches' sidelines, players hear talk, right? You guys gotta talk. You girls gotta talk. Because essentially the idea is that talking is how players communicate what needs to be done. And while that's partly true, we have to be better than that. And we have to really dive deeper into why mastering the nonverbal communication is essential to becoming a better player and playing on a better team. So, yeah, man. Where do you want to kick us off?
Well, I think you had a really good example that I think you shared with me the other day that we can start with.
Which one exactly was that? Was that from was this an older age group team?
Yeah, older age group team.
Got it. Yeah. So, you've seen those team exercises, right? Where it's players are in a circle, you throw the ball up, and then or you like pass the ball from one. Everybody has a ball, and they have to transfer the ball in their hands to the other team, right? Or to the other teammates. And coach is calling out, okay, go left, go right, whatever, or two to the left, right? And they have to transfer the ball. So what's really interesting is, if you ever see that, pay attention to sort of what players say, because I saw one where it was like this happened and players were talking. But again, I've seen this a few times, right? My question is always, okay, why are you saying what you are saying? And is it actually useful for the activity that you're doing? And in this case, I'm not so sure that's true. Because it's like, if you're not talking, you already hear the instruction, right? Two to the left. If you do that two to the left, you can do that without saying a word, which activates hyper focuses on looking and making sure that you, right, have that nonverbal communication with your partners, and then you can focus all your energy on the ball. Because the way the way I saw this happen was like, when the ball drops, it's a mistake, right? Everybody gets punished. So if I had to ask you, when do you think most of the mistakes were made? Before, when the players were talking, or after, when they weren't saying much?
The mistakes probably happened when the players were talking.
It was fascinating to watch. They were actually a lot cleaner when they stopped just mindless. Yeah, and here's the point. It was just mindless. Left, right, information that they'd already heard. So, you see what I mean? So, anyway, that's not like the game example, because it's a icebreaker game essentially, but it really, I think, highlights this idea that when we talk about communication, we really have to start with the nonverbal first, because without saying a word, we're already communicating something. And the game's too fast. Here's the point, right? I mean, we're not going to bury the lead. We're going to start off with the most important point, which is that the game of soccer is too fast to talk your way through it. It's too fast. Decisions are being made too fast. So,
Yeah, and I was going to add that maybe sometimes that's the default, because it's like a comfortable crutch to use, that, but if we just talked, the problem will be solved. If we just talked, then, we'll figure out X, Y, Z, right? And I think I hear that all the time, from whether it's players or coaches, like you said, parents. I mean, hey guys, just talk, right? And so I do think that we do need to dive into the nonverbal, because I think that gets into the game intelligence piece of like, hey, what is going on? Do you see what's going on? What's the situation? What part of the field? Right? What's the momentum of the game like? Things like that. And so that's where we can dive into some really interesting stuff, because what it means is that sometimes players are kind of maybe on autopilot, and they're relying on someone to say something, that verbal simulation, to then cue you into the next action of what you need to do or what you need to be thinking at, what you need to be looking at, which, I mean, again, like you said, the game moves way too fast for that.
No, it's we could spend hours, but we're going to limit it to a short period of time. I like what you said there too, because it goes beyond the field, and it really boils down to this, which is the biggest misconception about communication is that effective communication has taken place just because we said something, right? But when you dive deeper into how do the context of what was said, how was it said, when is it said, to whom, right? For what purpose, with what tone, all these things matter. And then when it comes to the game, the actual game, the best players in any given scenario and on any given pitch are the ones who are steps ahead in their process. What does that mean? It means that they're reading cues from the environment and then deciding before other players, right? And they're so, it's not so reactive, it's more proactive. They anticipate, and if it looks like they're a step faster, it's because they're a step faster or 2 steps faster up here, and then physically we're seeing the end product of that. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's the before, right?
Yeah. There's a whole process that goes into what they're doing before they do it. That
Absolutely.
Whatever that action is, whether it's a pass or whether it's a shot or whether it's a cross or whatever. People don't. I don't know if they. It's one of those things like the analogy of the iceberg. The iceberg analogy, right? Like we see that top bit, and it's like, oh, that's what we're going to focus on. We're like, wait a second, did you see this guy check his shoulder? Did you see this guy position himself a little bit differently? And then he received it and made that pass, right? Like, so I think there needs to be understanding that like there's a lot more happening under the surface, and that if you're a player that wants to move up in levels, you have to have a lot more under the surface, right? It can't just be that, oh, I just need someone to yell at me. I just need someone to say something. It's like, that may not always be possible for many reasons. One, because the game moves too fast. And as the game grows, and maybe as you go to different spaces and places, you might actually be around people that don't speak the same language as you. And that's something that I've experienced, right? Whether I was in Spain or in Thailand, you think about people saying, oh, talk, talk, talk. Well, I found myself in some situations where it's not effective for me to talk because I can't speak the same language as you, right? Or I can't speak it as well in terms of the Spanish. In terms of the Thai, impossible, right? So when I'm hearing things, I'm not necessarily listening so that I can understand, because I really can't. I don't have that base. I don't have that foundation. What I'm doing, though, is that I'm watching the game. I'm understanding and taking the cues from training or the ideas from training. I'm looking at player tendencies. What does this player like to do? What does that player like to do? So then I understand, okay, broadly what our team tactics are, and then what individual players do. Now I can put myself in that situation and kind of work effectively and to a certain extent comfortably, because of all my other senses being heightened, I understand fully well what I have to do, right? And so I think that's what players need to do more. And not to say that every player is going to be in that situation, but you can't always talk and figure things out that way. So.
Yeah, it's I like what you said there about essentially what you're driving at is it frees you up. The less you talk often frees you up to focus on other things, right? So when you're talking, and you can do this, I encourage people to try this. For the coaches listening out there, imagine 2 people, right, sprinting like 50 yards, let's say, and you instruct one of them, as you sprint, you have to talk. You have to even give them a rehearsed, sentence or whatever to say, like over and over as they run. And then the other person, you just said, you don't have to say anything, just run, right? as the distances get bigger and bigger, who do you think's gonna win that race? The person who has to run and like once upon a time, or this person who's just running?
The person who's running has the clear advantage.
Is there just because they're free to it now? Here's the thing. I put that's really artificial in terms of football because it's just in a straight line. You get what I'm saying? Now we both know football doesn't happen in a straight line. The running is, and you can, right? The running happens. You can cut people off. The ball can go different angles. There's not track. So now when you add all those elements, it's like it's again, it's just proving the point. It's impossible to talk your way through a football match. Not saying that actually, like, talking is not important. It is important. It's just not necessarily the first thing that we need to go to. And we constantly overlook it because we're in a paradigm in youth development, especially here in the States, where people think, oh, talk, open your mouth. Yeah, but that's not the starting point, right? And it has to be more efficient than that. And if we could start from a better understanding of how communication works in football, we would get deeper into better communication. Because that's the point. It's not just talk. It's, can you say things more effectively? You know, I played with a guy, quick story. One of the, you know, in the locker room, right? You're in the locker room and the guys are, it's after training. You had a hard session, whatever. Guys have battled. And now we're relaxed. We're just kind of hanging out. And people's personalities come out, right? And things are said in there that, like, that really kind of show, like, who people are, but also just, like, whatever tensions exist or whatever. Things are said that you don't forget. The public doesn't know about them because, again, it stays kind of in the locker room. But it's just one of the most interesting conversations I've ever heard, but also just, like, I got to say, one of the most ruthless and insightful comments I've heard came from a senior player in the locker room that I was in, one of the most experienced players. And he said to one of the guys, we're done, and this other guy is talking and doing his thing. Like, he was kind of you could say the jokester in the locker room. And he said something, and then this guy goes, he was like, I think the context was he made a joke or something, right? He said something, and he was like, I'm just joking around, whatever, I'm just whatever, yeah. And this other guy goes, yeah, but you're always talking, but you're not saying anything. And I'm like, and it was like one of those where the comments were like, the whole room quiets down because everybody kind of hears it, or at least a few of us who were in that little corner of the locker room. Man. And it just made me go, damn. Because he wasn't just talking about this situation, right, of what that was happening in the locker room.
It was a little deeper,
It was much deeper because essentially he was telling this guy, because, like, the way he was off the field is the way he was on the field. Like, he was very big personality. And the guy basically called him out and said, yeah, but you're essentially saying this is wasted energy or there's no substance to it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I was like, damn, I reflected on that. Because I was like, wow, that's heavy to think about.
Yeah, and I think I'll add to that. I just, to I guess take the meaning from it. It's like, well, the loudest doesn't mean the best. The loudest doesn't mean the clearest. The loudest doesn't mean the most effective. And that's the message that this guy wants to get across to a teammate, right? And it's not I don't know how the guy took it, by the way. Like, how did the guy take it?
He laughed it off, and it was one of those he couldn't. And to be fair, none of us. No. He did, but it wasn't. It was said. So the senior player said it in a joking way, but critical, in a way that listen. He's the senior player is Dutch.
Yeah. So you got the cultural lines there too. Yeah.
So he's gonna be. He said it in a very Dutch way, of like.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say this, and I don't care whatever. Like, I'm gonna say this, and then the other guy took it, like, laughed, but then was just like, all right, dude, whatever. Like, it's after practice. It was like it was still kind of a joke.
Yeah.
So, but it was like poignant. Like, really, did you really need to say that? Like, it wasn't a fight at all. It was just one of those. They were both being very on brand with who they are. It's just when I was sitting there, getting ready and after training, and I heard that, I'm like, damn, I understand where this guy's coming from with what he's saying. But I'm like, that reflection turned inward because I'm like, man, I wonder how often I'm saying things without actually saying something, or how often I'm on the pitch and I'm busy, but I'm not effective. I'm not efficient, right?
Yeah.
And how much am I not seeing because I'm either talking or just running or whatever? You know what I mean? It's just like, because the whole point about communication is it has to be clear, concise, specific, because that's the best way to get stuff done, whether you're talking about football or whatever projects people are working on. You see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think just in terms of the specificity, that's something that I know in a lot of youth players that needs to be improved, because sometimes what comes out is more so the emotion than the clarity. So it's like, hey, come on. But it's like, what did you just say? Right? Like you said something, right? You talked, but what did you say, right? To use this guy's language, right? His verbiage. And it's like, what do you take from that? If you're my teammate, I'm like, hey, come on. There's nothing there. I didn't say anything about where to go, what to do, what the situation is or was, or how to improve it, right? Like I didn't give you anything contextual that could have helped you in any way. I basically just made noise at the end of the day. If I say, come on, check your shoulder, that's specific, right? And also even the tone in which I said it was a lot different. And I know you mentioned that earlier, that tone is also important, right? Because the tone needs to be one that is, I love one of my old teammates that said this, Noah. He said something about the information not carrying emotion, removing the emotion from it. Because at the end of the day, yes, we are emotional beings and we do have emotions even in the game. But the point is that it's not personal, right? So when I remove that emotion, I'm removing it from being a personal attack, right? So I'm not coming at you. I'm just giving you the information clear, sharp, you can hear it, and boom, let's go. Let's move on to the next thing, right? Instead of it being like, oh, dude, you're coming at me, right? No, that's not what it is at all, right? And I think that sometimes that's what the perception is from especially young players. They take it so personally, right? And let's just imagine and say that the communication actually was good, right? It was clear, it was concise, it was specific. And the other person doesn't want to hear it, so they're like, they just kind of brush him off. But it's like, no, I was very clear, right? I was clear, I was specific, I was concise. So the way we deliver information is important, but also the way we receive information is important. And that's where, that self-reflection is huge. You have to be prepared to look inward and say, hey, what was that person trying to say? Or did they say it? Or was I being stubborn? Was I being hard-headed? Was I being difficult in receiving that message? Right? And I think that completely changes a team's dynamic if each individual player can do that process,
No, spot on. And also now transitioning slightly, in order to create that, you see now the role of a coach is important, because especially at the grassroots level, as players develop, we can say that our job is to improve the communication between players. And by that is not just talking, but it's reading the cues and then taking action. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so to that point, you remember that experience, one of the first teams that I coached, and you were with me with this, when we actually had a presentation. We went over actual language that we were going to use. So essentially, the role of the coach, the youth coach especially, is to create, well, even older players, right? But it's to create a framework, a language, a way of communication and essentially you could say that's the game. The game is essentially how do we communicate with each other with this ball as the shared object. It's the only thing that we share, that we transfer between us, right? So we speak with it. If you have a defender on your right shoulder, right, and I give you a pass on your left side that's a little under hit, that tells you what? If there's not that much pace on it, and then I show for you, what does that tell you?
It's play it back.
Give it back.
Yeah.
Right? If I give it to you with a little bit more pace, right, on this side, you know that maybe you can turn or you have more space or whatever. You see what I mean? It's like, and when especially young players, I encourage them, when they listen to senior players or coaches at top level or whoever, like experts in the field, they listen to us. Not that we're not claiming to be like the experts, but I think we know quite a bit. You got to listen to the details in terms of how people at high levels do things. One video that stands out for me is Xavi Alonso, right? There are several, but Xavi Alonso, I think you know which one I'm talking about. It's Xavi Alonso talking about, I think he was at Real Madrid at this point. He was still playing, right? And he was talking about knowing how his teammates like to receive the ball, and that being the way that being the determinant factor for how he actually plays his passes, right? And anyone wants to look up a Xavi Alonso passing compilation, it's one of the most beautiful things, right? Especially if you appreciate passing. You and I both appreciate passing, appreciate dribbling as well, but like passing is how we share the ball, how we communicate. So I love that. And Xavi Alonso talks about Cristiano Ronaldo, when he played with him, loves the ball into space, right? So I believe that's what he said about it. Yeah, he's like, so I'll hit the ball a little bit differently. And then he mentioned somebody else who likes the ball maybe closer to feet, so he got to play that differently.
Ozil or somebody like that.
Ozil, I think he compared Ozil to Ronaldo and to all. I mean, that galaxy of stars that Madrid has. And he's like, yeah, so I play passes differently depending on who I'm passing it to. Linking this to previous video that you and I did, and maybe the young players will remember this, it's also on the flip side. Remember Thierry Henry talking about changing his run based on the player on the ball. So the player on the ball does it. Now, here's the thing. Both of these, Xavi Alonso and Thierry Henry, they're both talking about communication that's non-verbal. Yeah. Xavi Alonso looks to see who he's going to pass to, and when he decides, whatever in that process, because he's an amazing player, that process I'm sure was pretty quick, but whenever he decides, I'm going to Ronaldo, it's in behind, so I've got to do this. Boom. He's already, so he's communicating, right? And then on the other end, Henry's looking at, okay, where's the ball going before it gets there? Oh, it's going to this player. Okay, now I'm going to make a run like this. That's communication. And the top level, they don't have time, and they're playing in front of 65, 70,000 people in the stadium. So sometimes even actually hearing each other can be difficult, and potentially their teammate doesn't even speak the same language. So what do you think these men and women at the top level are actually relying on? A lot of this, or I look and I decide, right? I read, right? I plan, I do. That's communication. And if we're not encouraging that, developing and designing environments in our training for players to experience that, we are underloading that part of the game, and it's doing the players a disservice. So then we get to this paradigm of, you got to talk. Well, by the time you talk, it's probably too late.
Yeah.
If you're not you know what I mean? Most of the time in youth soccer. It's not, and that, so.
Yeah. You got to reframe the way you see things, because the way we're talking about this, it sounds like, and I know we can dive into this a little bit, it sounds like this should be one of those fundamentals that are taught
100%.
early.
Yeah.
When we talk about
Absolutely.
fundamentals, people usually skip over that. When they talk about fundamentals, most people will talk about technique, like, oh, you got to do this or this or this with the ball, right? But very rarely do people talk about fundamentals being your scanning, your decision making, your positioning, things like that, right? It automatically jumps to the action, which, speaking of this, some of these higher level examples, Arsene Wenger kind of said this, and he spoke on this, that people talk about the action or the execution, and that's the last step, but they talk about it first. It's backward, right? You gotta start with the processing, the seeing, the processing, the decision making, then the execution, right? And so I think that for a lot of players, that process is backward and it needs to be changed. And hopefully it's done early enough, because you and I both know that at a certain age, if that process continues, then yeah, you're probably going to struggle more often than not, especially if you're serious at playing at higher levels. So.
No, absolutely. Now let me ask you, because you made the example of you with Noah and that Flower City team, and I remember that conversation with you guys about the way you would deliver information, right? So because let's be real, actual now verbal communication, actual speaking is important. It's just how it happens, when it happens, and whatever is what we need to dive deeper into. Of course, the maturity of how you receive information, how we give and receive words, develops as we mature. I want to ask you though, like, what do you think is an important takeaway for young players in terms of what they should be saying and how they should be saying it to their teammates?
Well, the main thing is that it has to have substance, right? Like the commentary can't be the internal
meaning what? Meaning what? Dive, because I know what you mean, but I want to make it clear for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I talk about substance, oftentimes our internal voice says something, and usually in less mature players at any age, right, and at any stage of development, the less mature players will say what they've immediately thought. So if my thought was, oh, damn, dude, like, why'd you do that? Then out loud comes, oh, why'd you do that? Or come on, right? Does that make sense? So the substance of understanding that, like, how can I give them something that they can actually use? That I can't, when I give that to someone, right, it's just word vomit. There's nothing to it, right? Like I said earlier, I haven't helped them learn from what just happened. I haven't helped them move on from what just happened, right? So I haven't helped them. Right? If anything, it was just about me venting. So there has to be substance of, all right, first of all, usually encouragement. Like that was a big thing between Noah and I, was like, hey man, you got the next one. Like if I give a bad pass or he gives a bad pass, I'm not concerned about it. I know he's going to run back and help me. He knows I'm going to run and help him. So it's about that relationship and understanding like, all right, like whatever's going to happen, we'll be fine. We'll recover. Right? So that takes time to develop that relationship and understanding, because we have to talk about that even, for example, in training or off the field. We go get a coffee. You sit down with someone like, hey, this is when this situation happens, we'll be fine. So there's some pre-planning there that that sometimes, again, when we're watching a game on TV or you're in the stands, you don't understand that. You don't see that stuff. But what you do see is, oh, that dude just sprinted 60 yards back, right? And so when Noah does that, we have a clear understanding. So for me, the information needs to not be rooted in emotion. So I'm not just venting. So that's one thing. The second thing is I need to filter the information I want to give. So it needs to be more concise, right? If I just say everything I'm thinking, well, again, the game's moving too quickly. So concise. And I need to make sure that it's delivered quickly, right? Like if I'm not delivering it quickly enough, then again, the game's moving quickly. Like it's not going to, that message isn't going to get across. Right. And so those are the biggest takeaways from me, that there's got to be substance. It's got to be done quickly, and take the emotion out of it. Don't be venting. It's not a time to vent. The game is moving on, and you need to move on as well. So those are, I think, the three main things that I would say.
No, I love that. And of course, it's all dependent. The age and stage of development here is important, as it is with all the things, because obviously the younger the players are, the more
difficult that process is, 100%.
But we can introduce it. We have to introduce it, and we can address it. And we can encourage it. The best teams, the best players have that. Working with young players, as you and I both have for a while, that's actually one of the first things that's important to have when you have a group that's willing to play, that's able to play together and willing to fight for each other, because we reference a lot that specific team. And some of those names that, like the team that we had that used to have that free play day on the Wednesday, right? One thing you watch when kids are playing on their own without the coaching interventions is you start to then see sort of the way that they communicate and the natural sort of some of the tensions, but also some of the synergies, like who combines really well, or who gets upset at who gets upset when somebody loses the ball, who looks for each other, who gives high fives to each other. There are all these things you're taking note. Now, everything I'm talking about here is what I want to add to what you said, is it's also so important for coaches to reflect on how much they are verbally communicating. in training, but also obviously in matches. Because just like you said, for players, where it can be, your own word vomit is how you put it, right? Your own ego of like, I gotta vent or something, rather than substance.
Yeah.
I gotta say something just to feel like whatever. The same can go for coaches, right? It's like, oh man, if I'm not standing up and spewing stuff, I'm not actually coaching. People actually think like this, when actually, if you step back and you reflect and you say, well, the work is done in training first and foremost, in terms of fine-tuning these things that we want to see in the match. And then when I'm watching the game, right? When I'm watching the game, reflecting and filtering what is actually important to say, when can I say it, and then boom, I say, and then get out, because the player's attention has to be on the pitch. It can't be over to me.
Yeah,
it has to be on the pitch.
And sometimes, unfortunately, that's the case, right? Is you have a kid
absolutely.
The game is here, but they're looking this way, maybe at the parents, right? Or they're looking this way at the coach, and it's like, well, the game is going by you, right?
And they can't play.
Those
kids, they're going to be found out at a certain level, because again, the game's too fast. The game's too fast. This is not a knock on anyone. As coaches, we've all done this. I have a story actually, just a week ago. I'm happy to say I don't do this often, but it was a moment where I gave a really poor coaching point, and my friend goes, one of the other coaches says, "Don't you think he knows that?" And I'm like, Yeah, you're right. I didn't need to say that. And here's the thing. It's not even that I said it necessarily for me. Honestly, but it was more like, I have to say this in reflection, I thought that I didn't say it for me. Right. But then actually diving deeper into reflection, maybe I did. And it was just like a spur of the moment type deal. Which is because what I was trying to do was connect something, to a previous interaction I had with this player in training, where we kind of worked on a situation that he now found himself in. But my friend's point, like my coaching colleague's point, still stood, and it was completely valid. Of, you didn't need to say that in that moment, and it was beautiful because we could both laugh about it. And then I was just like, I sat down and it was whatever. But the point he made was, what you just told him there, which was something about his touch, the player's touch, was something that didn't need to be said. And thankfully, I don't have many of those situations, because as a coach, once you grow from, I need to deliver this information to the players about their touch and this and that, once you move on from that, a whole world is open to you. You can now focus, just like players, you can focus your attention on sort of more relevant things and fine-tune other things. Or sometimes, mostly, I encourage all the coaches that I work with, just observe, right? Observe. Because silent. Also, there's power in that, because also when you stand up to then finally deliver whatever coaching point you're going to make, the players are more likely to listen to you, because you haven't been standing and spewing your own word vomit for the last 10, 20 minutes, however long. It's like, coach is just watching. We're going to do it. We're going to resolve it. And now, coach is up. Now, boom, I got the information. I go back. You see the difference? Mm-hmm. It's more, because players, especially top players, this because you and I have both been in situations like this. If coaches is talking all the time or saying things that you don't think apply to you, you just tune them out, right? You just tune them out. And top players, it doesn't matter who you are. Players do this to Pep. They talk, right? Like, don't get me twisted. Like, I appreciate Pep and any top coach, but a lot of what happens with coaches at top level is fluff, and I'm not going to say for the camera, but it's like habits that they have that aren't actually effectively solving anything, right? Mm-hmm. Champions League final just happened, just in his video. Inzaghi. Did you see Inzaghi on the sideline? I think he actually got yellow carded too. The referee came over and showed him a yellow card. Inzaghi was losing his mind. Yeah. And
he was also just upset that they were getting.
He's of course. But my point is him losing his mind. Did that help his players?
No, because they were just lost and confused, and yeah.
And I'm not saying don't do anything, or don't do do nothing. It's just when we actually reflect on communication and what's happening. It's different than how it's often presented. to us. It happens very differently. So it's worth thinking about if you want to be a better coach and if you want to be a better player.
100%. 100%. So what would you leave the audience with today then on communication?
No, man, I think I love what you said about the players reflecting on how they deliver what they say, and whether it's their, and filtering that through their ego, and making sure that it's quick and concise. And then the other thing I was just going to say is just it's next action. If you have a next action mentality, your communication is going to be more positive. If you're living in the past, your communication is going to... Isn't that interesting? Like, negative communication is usually us living in the past, right? Because if I get upset at you for a pass that you gave away, literally, like, it's gone. You gave away the ball. Like, it's gone. Do you know what I mean? Like, hey, what are you doing? That when you said, what are you doing? Well, what do you mean, what am I doing? I just gave away the ball. You saw what I did.
Yeah.
I gave it to the other team. If I'm thinking next action, it's going to be, all right, recover. That, you see what I mean? That recover is it's acknowledging that the ball has been lost, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the same information, but because it's delivered so differently, it just means that we're set up for something different.
Mm-hmm. It prompts the next action, and it
prompts the next action.
Yeah, and it's very clear, very specific what it means. There's no confusion at all as to what I just said, or like I said, what it means.
So I guess what I would also leave the players with is this. Now, ultimately we back up our communication. So, and I mean by we back up our verbal communication, to be more specific, with what we do. Because if you don't back it up with what you do, that also, it doesn't mean anything. Right. And ultimately, what I really want players to walk away with is we are always communicating, always. So your body language before you say or do anything on the field, the way you step onto a field is communicating something, right? And again, when you think about the beautiful thing about this sport in particular is people are communicating with your feet, right? We're communicating with a feet and with an object that's rolling on the floor mostly. And it's the farthest away from your brain, right? And your eyes. It's the farthest away from your command center is something on the floor. And in this sport, we're tasked with doing that, which means we have to be so tuned into seeing things before they happen. This is what makes a sport special, right? It's very different. When you hold something in your hands, you can hold it in your hands, your fingers, right? We can grip something. You watch basketball players all the time hold the ball, and then they can kind of communicate. I'm not saying they don't communicate fast. They communicate very fast. Don't get me wrong. But there's a little bit of more of a time edge there where I can hold it, wait for you, and now I can go. With soccer, we have to be quicker, right? Because if I don't read things before, the ball's at my feet and someone's gonna come and just take it. I can't literally just hold the ball in perpetuity. Do you know what I'm saying? And for people who want to get better at this sport, understand the complexities of it, and then you'll be much better. So, what do you want to leave the people with?
I think you hit the nail on the head, man. I think we hit every single point we needed to.
All right, dude, this was fun. It's been a while. I'm glad we're back at it, and hopefully everyone enjoys this. This will be out soon, and we have some awesome things still lined up. I don't know if at some point we'll get into why we had a break, not the details of it, but maybe at some point we'll mention that. But I do want to sign off with everybody. Take care of yourself. Take care of family. Love your people. We appreciate you all for tuning in. We appreciate this community. Umbi, it's always a pleasure to talk football with you. And I'm going to give you the last word.
All right, man. Well, it is a pleasure to be back. Always love spending this time with you, and very much appreciate you for what you do for the family, but also for me. And yeah, I can't wait for next time on the Impact Space podcast.